thinks women can't get up to serious trouble? Well, the joke's on you, because there's not a woman on this list that I would have wanted to meet. They're all terrifying. From pirates, to cowboys, to con artists, to murderers. Today we have a top 10 list of scary, infamous female outlaws, and some are still on the run today. So if you catch them, cool. Coming in at number 10, we have Sally Scull. Sally Scull was known to be a great shooter, a cusser, and a horse thief. She had a total of 5 husbands whom she kept for as long as they could handle her. Some divorced, while others found mysterious exits. Sally grew up tough, having to defend their farm constantly from intruders, and once watched her mother Rachel, the name, chop off the toes of a man trying to break in. I really shouldn't relate my name to that situation, but here we are. So as a result, Sally was always ready to fight and apparently didn't take much to start gunslinging. And reportedly, she was ambidextrous and could shoot with both her right and left hand. She was also known, of course, for her horse wrangling, which wasn't always legal. In fact, most often, it wasn't. Sally would ride from Texas to Mexico there and back by herself, and always come back with horses to trade and unharmed. Clearly, this was a woman who people thought twice about when it came to messing with her. Coming in at number 9, we have Ma Barker. Before she became Ma Barker, she was Arizona Donnie Clark, a fiery, ill-tempered, restless girl stuck in the small ways of life. But when she saw infamous outlaw Jesse James ride through town, she saw her future flash before her eyes, and boy did she want it. Arizona married a soft-spoken man named George Barker, who did nothing to fulfill her dreams besides give her 4 troublesome boys. But soon, her boys became one of the most iconic gangs of the West, with Ma Barker orchestrating the whole thing. The Barker Carpus gang made away with $500,000 in cash and bonds in their first bank robbery, and they didn't stop there. The second robbery wasn't as clean, but it solidified a murderous reputation for the group. Ma Barker soon made it to the top of the most wanted list before she died in an epic shootout with police on January 16, 1935. Ma Barker got what she wanted at the end: adventure, a notorious reputation, and took down all those who got in her way. Coming in at number 8, we have Belle Starr. Here we have another infamous name of the West, Belle Starr. Most of Belle's life involved relationships with some already infamous outlaws like notorious bank train robber Jesse James, as I already mentioned. Belle's marriage to Jim Reed was the beginning of her life of crime though. Reed and his family were constantly running from the law, and allegedly Belle joined in, though some historians suggest that was not the case. She did take their 2 children and rejoined her family before Reed died in 1874. But then she met Sam Starr, a Cherokee and part of the Starr gang, and there was no going back. Over the course of her marriage, legends of Belle spread across the West. She carried 2 pistols at all times, wore gold earrings and a man's feather-brimmed hat. She was arrested several times over the course of her career, but after Sam was killed, she reformed and never even sheltered criminals ever again. When she married a 3rd time, she didn't even defend her husband when he was accused of horse thievery. But that didn't stop someone from building a vendetta against her. The life and crimes of Belle Starr came to an end when she was shot to death riding home from her friends, but to this day, no one knows who put an end to the legend. Alright, coming in at number 7, we have Rachel Wall. Now, we've talked about some outlaws on land, but what about those on the sea? Rachel Wall was someone you never wanted to come across if you wanted to live a long and healthy life. Rachel loved the sea and wanted to be as close as possible, which is partly why she married a fisherman, George Wall. What drew the couple to piracy though, no one knows, but boy were they good at it. Whenever there was a bad storm, they would disguise their stolen ship, the Essex, and make it look like it crashed. Rachel would then pose on the ship, luring sailors nearby with cries for help, so she was kind of like the first siren. As soon as they were close enough though, they would rob and kill all of them. Over the course of the pirating career, they killed 24 sailors and robbed 12 ships, accounting in $12,000 cash. But one night their plot went horribly wrong and George was drowned at sea, leaving Rachel all alone. But she didn't stop there and instead resorted to highway robbery. She just couldn't stop. She loved it. Unfortunately though for Rachel, she robbed the wrong bonnet one day and was convicted. She was one of New England's first female pirates and the last woman to be hung in the Boston Common of Massachusetts. Coming in at number 6, we have Ruth Eisman Schier, coming up closer to modern day. Ruth Eisman Schier, one of the few women to make it onto the FBI's most wanted list. Her and her boyfriend at the time kidnapped a rich heiress named Barbara Mackle and ransomed her for $500,000. Keep in mind this was in the 1960s, so that may not seem like a ton of money to go through kidnapping someone now, but it was back then. But they didn't just tie her up in a basement and leave her for days or something like that. No, what she did was something incredible. incredibly terrifying. They buried Barbara alive in a coffin. Fortunately, they fed a ventilated tube into the coffin so they could keep her alive as a bargaining chip. Thankfully though, Michael was found 3.5 days later, dehydrated, starving, but still alive. Ruth's lover Gary Christ was arrested almost right away, but it would be 79 days until they would catch Ruth. She was arrested in Oklahoma while pretending to be a 19-year-old college student, but obviously her disguise wasn't good enough. Ruth only served 4 of her 7-year sentence before she was deported back to Honduras. Listen, anyone who can bury anyone alive sounds absolutely terrifying to me, which is why Ruth Eisman is on this list. And arriving at number 5, we have Jauna Barraza. Mexican wrestler turned killer, Jauna Barraza's life is anything but boring. Jauna had a torturous childhood, suffering from abuse from her parents, and never even learned how to read. When she finally left home, Barraza endured several failed marriages, miscarriages, and her firstborn was killed during an episode of gang violence at the age of 24. But during the 1980s, 1990s, she toured central Mexico as a masked wrestler named La Dame de Silencio, the Lady of Silence. But unfortunately, she still fell into poverty and eventually hatched a plan to steal from the elderly, which eventually evolved to murder. Her and her accomplice would dress as nurses to gain access and then rob the elderly homeowner once inside. But her accomplice double-crossed her, getting her corrupt police boyfriend to extort her for the money she stole in exchange for not being arrested. So she was kind of broke even then. After retiring from wrestling in 2000, Barraza became more desperate, which is when the killings began. Barraza evaded police for years as they weren't even looking for a woman, but a man. She was even on TV for an interview a week before her arrest and no one suspected a thing. The only reason she was caught was that someone saw her leave a crime scene and she was arrested right on the spot. Despite being illiterate, they found trophies and paper clippings of all the crimes she committed. She was able to evade capture and suspicion for 5 years, and her crimes still haunt Mexico to this day. Coming in at number 4, we have Margo Freshwater. This next one definitely sounds like something that belongs in Orange is the New Black. In 1970, Margo Freshwater was serving out her sentence for first-degree murder in Tennessee all-female prison, but not for long. On October 4th, her and her inmate Faye Fairchild dodged armed officers escorting them and scaled the fence and caught a one-way ticket to freedom. Margo would be on the run for 32 years, only to be discovered as a grandmother of 7 with 2 children in Idaho. But that's not even the wildest part. The way she got into prison in the first place is kinda crazy. Margo was trying to convince a lawyer to help her get her current boyfriend out of jail. She and the lawyer soon began an affair, but the thing was, the lawyer was kind of paranoid that people were after him. So what did he do? They went on a crime spree, killing 2 convenience store clerks and a cab driver. The lawyer was committed to a mental asylum, but Margo was convicted of murder for all 3 crimes, even though she claimed he forced her to. Still, after she escaped and 32 years on the run, she was placed back in prison in 2002, only serving time until she was released in 2011. We're arriving at our top 3 now, guys, so if you do like this video, tell us. Press the little button that looks like this down there, and then we'll keep going. Coming in at number 3, we have Griselda Blanco, a woman you would never want to cross paths with. If you did, you probably wouldn't live to tell the tale. Also known as the Black Widow and the Queen of Cocaine, Griselda was a central figure in the drug wars of America during the 1970s and 80s. She trafficked cocaine with the Medellin cartel in high-profile areas like Miami, Florida, New York, and Southern California. She was said to be an absolutely ruthless killer, and while authorities only convicted her for 40 deaths, there is reason to suspect her number hits over 200. She was also notorious for murdering her husbands over trivial matters, but especially over money. But her bloodlust didn't stop there. Griselda was known for holding all-female orgies where she would execute all the strippers afterward for pleasure. Blanco had the DEA on her trail for years, but she always managed to cleverly evade them. That is, until she was finally caught in 1985. Still, she was able to strike a deal and only serve 15 years in prison for her crimes. Some even say there was some manipulation of the trial when it came to those who testified. But after Griselda was released in 2004, someone still had it out for her, and she was assassinated after she was deported to Colombia at the age of 69. This woman was 100% lethal and the last person you would have wanted to be stuck in a room with. Coming in at number 2, we have Hazel Leota Head. Now for an outlaw who is still on the run today. Hazel Leota Head is wanted for the murder of widower Charles Barker in 1998. Imagine if someone watching this is like, oh wait, I saw her at the grocery store yesterday. Charles Barker had recently lost his wife of 11 years due to a drunk driver and fell into a deep depression. He spent a lot of the insurance money gambling and drinking, which is where he got the attention of Hazel Leota Head, or Deanna Ray as he would know her. Within a few days she moved in with him. His family was excited that he'd met someone, but after meeting her, daughter Jennifer was like, yeah, she's after your money, Dad. And Charles was like, yeah, I think she is too. Don't worry, I'll talk to her about it. She never heard from him again and was found with a bullet in the back of his head. Hazel, nowhere to be seen. His gun was wiped clean, the safe was entirely empty, which meant $45,000 were missing, and his car was found at an airport with DNA in the seat that identified Deanna as Hazel. Hazel reportedly had been married over 10 times and used alias after alias for each of them. She is wanted also for arson, theft, and now murder. Hazel would be 72 years old today and counting, so if you spot her, tell someone. Probably a good idea. Coming in at number 1, we have Ching Shih. From prostitute to pirate lord, Ching Shih was one of the most infamous pirates to rule the high seas. Highly organized, ruthless, and precise, Ching Shih eventually ruled over as many as 50 to 70,000 pirates in her lifetime. While working as a prostitute, she caught the eye of already famous pirate captain of the Red Flag Fleet, Cheng Yi. There are multiple accounts as to how they got together, but both versions involve the captain proposing to her. She said yes, but not before she negotiated that they would share the power of the fleet and any plunder. Together they grew the fleet from 200 ships to 1,800 and categorized their fleet by colors, red being in the lead, the others being black, yellow, white, and blue. But only 6 years into their marriage, Cheng Yi died and Ching Shih stepped into the role wholeheartedly. She ran a tight ship, handing out fierce punishments to all those who disobeyed the code. She was strict with her prisoners, keeping her men in check should any woman be taken in. Should they take a wife? Fine, but they had to remain faithful, if not, dead. If they took a woman against her will, dead. Any who deserted would be hunted down, tortured, then killed. The Red Fleet eventually felt like a floating country, even routinely taxing villages. She earned the name the Terror of South China, and soon the Chinese government realized they couldn't defeat her, so they made a bargain. A bargain that allowed her to retire wherever she liked and bathe in her riches. There's actually so much to this story, but for now, I think we can all agree she would have been the last person you wanted to see on the horizon. And that is our top 10 list of scary, infamous female outlaws. I've been your host, Rachel Fisher, not to be confused with Rachel Wall, but honestly guys, I love pirates. Like, Pirates of the Caribbean was and still is my absolute obsession. I think it's great. Anyways, let us know in the comments if you dug this video and be sure to subscribe, stay up to date. Until then, I will see you next time.